Hello and welcome to SME TV. This is the Let's Talk Views segment and I'm your host, Angela Vithoulkas. Today we're talking about the economy post-COVID-19. We pull apart the 5 things that are holding it up and discuss the new priorities of government. Jobs, jobs and more jobs. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can support us and all SMEs. And you know what? We'd love for you to comment. Jump on right now, comment below, tell us what you think, but most importantly, please share SME TV. Now, joining us today is financial coach and founder of Sort My Money, David Rankin. Welcome, David.
Hi, Angela.
Look, it's an interesting time if you're the money man, the economics expert, if you're evaluating what's going on, what's coming forward, how your customers might view this, the general economic money feel of the economy. It's a little bit better than we thought or hoped, or is it as tough as we thought or dreaded?
Well, I'd almost go back a step before that. And if you go back 3 months, the economic landscape was totally different, wasn't it? Isn't that a fascinating thing that we're talking about a brand new economic landscape that has been created over 3 months? But you are right.
Entirely unexpected.
Entirely unexpected.
No idea.
Yeah. And it's like going through it's like a piece of music and it completely goes somewhere else than you would expect. The good news about this piece of music, as you say, Angela, it is looking better than we would expect, given that everything did change 3 months ago. When that happens, people tend to fear the worst. And in some parts of the world, there's good reason for that. But yeah, we seem to be in a relatively good place. I say relatively.
So well, let's pull it apart piece by piece here. So we've had Jobseeker, Jobkeeper. We're working on Jobmaker. We've had banks putting some of the debt or the payments on hold, or in instances of like Westpac, letting people pay interest only instead of principal and interest. And then we've also had free childcare. Now, some of these things or all of these things are going to come to an end.
Yeah, and one other thing there as well, Angela, is we've got the ability, some people have the ability to pull 10,000 tax-free.
That's right, out of super.
This financial year, and then as of July, as of next financial year, another 10,000. That's right.
That's right. That's 20 grand. And for some people, they will spend that wisely. And others there's already the data that shows that they didn't spend it on anything essential.
And some people are saving it. Okay. Yeah. It's a bit strange that you would pull savings out of savings to save them. But yeah, it's at least it could be worse.
Well, you wouldn't get this opportunity. You know, getting money out of super is almost impossible unless you've got a life-threatening disease and you can justify, something going on. So
absolutely. I'm
not surprised people took advantage of this.
No, I'm not surprised at all. It's such a rare event. I think some people, the data is showing that some people are saving this. Now, obviously, super is a form of deferred savings. I think the reason for that, I think some people have been cynical about that, but I think really the reason for that is they want really to be sure, so they don't know what's happening.
They want to be prepared.
And they want that in the back pocket, don't they?
We don't blame them, because we've gone from having these massive restrictions and lockdowns. We're starting to ease restrictions and lockdowns. But at the same time, we're told we've got to be safe. We've got to practice all these different social distancing measures and hygiene measures because we might have a second wave.
Exactly. That's another great point, Angela, that everybody, in a way, irrespective of your position, you've got to kind of plan for the worst, haven't you?
That's right. Well, plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Hope for the best.
Cross your fingers and your toes and see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, David, let's talk about the RBA, because they're an influential economic body in the country.
Yeah.
What have they been saying?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? In this atmosphere of heightened awareness, indicators take on a new heightened meaning, don't they?
Yes.
And so when somebody like Philip Lowe, the governor of the RBA, speaks, we tune in a lot more than we would normally even. And last week he spoke to a parliamentary committee, and in essence his message was the downturn won't be as bad as expected, but it will probably be longer. And actually that tallies really well with a government's aim in this environment. The government wants to flatten the curve. That's what we were always told, and that's what all governments are seeking to do. Flatten the curve means that you want to take the drama out of the situation, and the price to pay for that is the situation will extend longer. So in other words, that's a big vote of confidence in the government's decisions so far. But the fact that the governor comes out and says that the downturn won't be as bad as expected is a very positive sign. We'll take that.
So that's optimism, and then that flows through in influencing or shoring up the share market. What about the fact that we've seen some issues with the property market?
One thing I would just say about the governor of the RBA, one thing that he was suggesting to, and this is his nudge to the government, is that he's suggesting really that Jobkeeper should be extended. So will come back to that. There's a theme here of trying to, of a tapering off of measures. Now, you mentioned the housing
and the hard, we will come back to that because there's a hard and a soft landing here of the economy projection. So we will come back to that, but right.
Okay, so if we take housing prices, which is obviously such a big indicator in the Australian economy, they play such a large role in our economy. So housing, again, another indicator which we tune into with fine antennae. So CoreLogic is regarded as the leader in the field when it comes to giving house price guidance. And the latest CoreLogic data over the past few days shows a drop throughout Australia of 0.4% for the month of May. Now, month of May was entirely, let's call it a COVID month.
Yes.
So 0.4 is a good indicator of where we're at. And what does 0.4 drop mean? It means the damage to the property market has been less than many experts have anticipated. So along with the RBA's comments last week, CoreLogic data, 0.4 drop, it's negative, but it's expected to be, but it's actually pretty good. It's another heartening indicator of the economy.
I think even I like to think I'm a glass half full kind of person and realistic on economic outlines and the forecasts. And even I'm feeling strangely optimistic about how those big things that matter, not the first world problems, could I get my hair and nails done during lockdown, but the fact that the big things that matter have stood strong, which is a great indicator of how strong the country actually is.
It is. There's an interesting one with house prices as well, because a couple of weeks ago, Commonwealth Bank came back with their analysis forecasting a drop of between, I believe off the top of my head, between 11 and 30% depending on how bad the downturn would be.
Yeah, that's horrible.
So we'll see if they're wrong, but so far they're looking like they're wrong, and that's the biggest bank in Australia. There was actually somebody who took an opposing view. There's a commentator in the Australian Financial Review called Christopher Joy. He's very interesting. As his name suggests, he's fairly joyful and optimistic. Right. And he argued at the time with that analysis, and he said he didn't think there'd be a big drop. And he pointed to a really interesting fact. It's a slight tangent, but it's interesting.
No.
And that is that these days, if you have money, you have spare cash, it's really difficult to get a return on that cash. Yes. So if you put money in a term deposit, you're probably looking at 2% if you're lucky.
If you're lucky, 1.25 maybe, yep.
Exactly. Then you've got the share market, which has its ups, but it has its downs, and it's fairly volatile. But then you've also got property as an investment, domestic property, and you can maybe get 4 or 5% a year on a rental property. So he said that makes domestic Australian property relatively highly attractive. And he said for that reason, there's not going to be a big housing downturn. So far, he's right. So we'll see how that one goes.
Yes, and I noticed myself around this time that we've got some financial commentators who are scared to actually expand on the negative interest rates that are overseas, and that everyone's crossing their fingers don't come here. And the fact that I think it was Sweden or Denmark where the banks are paying people to borrow money to buy a house.
Yeah, there's an account. I
can't get my head around that, David.
Yeah, there's a savings account in Germany where the bank will pay you. I think it's more of a marketing ploy. It's for a given amount.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I think it's more of a publicity thing. But yeah, it is a possibility, but it doesn't look
likely.
It's a possibility for us at the moment.
We don't want to walk through that door. But
no, that's right.
There are going to be some areas, though, of our economy that have already been hit and that are going to take a lot longer than the rest of them to recover. That's travel and tourism.
That's a fairly big one, isn't it? I would say you can even say as a broad category, you can say hospitality.
Yeah.
And that's high on the government's list. So you're right. What we're looking at here, it's an interesting point you make, because when something like this breaks, the reaction to it, and we saw it with the GFC, with Rudd Swan, and we're seeing it now with Morrison Frydenberg, is a broad brush approach to begin with. And then what you do is you start to narrow down to the sectors which have been hit. And we're getting to that point now where they're starting to get more granular. And I expect that there will be specific support as opposed to broad brush support going forward. I think the government support will be much more targeted. And I think hospitality will be very high up on their list. Hospitality, construction. Construction's a big driver of the Australian economy. And for that very reason, government support's going to be involved, and hospitality is the one that's been probably hit the hardest. So that's the reason why that's also top of the list. I mean, that some of the numbers show that the construction industry employs like a million people in Australia, which is such a big chunk. That's correct. To even contemplate being unemployed, or even if it's only half of that or a quarter of that. So they're industries that need to be assisted to get through this. And of course, you don't know when travel is going to be lifted internationally in and out of Australia. And that's going to affect tourism, accommodation, and therefore hospitality again. Exactly right. So just on the construction side, like you said, also a big part of that, which goes to other industries as well, is apprentices and apprenticeships. They are always disproportionately affected by any downturn, as per the current downturn, because by definition those people don't yet have the skills, so they're more dispensable, if you like. Now the 7:30 report on ABC recently suggested that 15,000 apprenticeships and apprentices have been stood down since March, which is a pretty big deal, because it goes to there's a lot of intertwined themes here, because it goes to the skills of our country. And why is that important? Well, it's important for a number of reasons. We've seen that international supply chains have been put under pressure and found wanting. We've suddenly realised how dependent we are on skills effectively and resources from overseas. And so that makes us, we're keen to be a bit more self-reliant, I think, as a country, aren't we? We've seen our weaknesses, right? We have. We were scared we were going to run out of toilet paper. So we freaked out, let alone what happens if we have a massive unemployment. We lose the pipeline of skills because it takes time to train people to become qualified to have those skills. And the other part of this equation, Angela, is immigration. In a way, we've kind of taken a few things for granted, and it's been a wake-up call, and a good one. We've taken for granted those international supply chains that run smoothly, and we've taken for granted people's willingness to come to Australia and to bring their education and their skills, because let's be honest, who wouldn't want to come to Australia? That's right. And now that the estimates show that international migration into Australia is going to be down in the next 12 months by probably 85%. So those skills are no longer coming here. So it's a good thing in one respect, in that it lifts us out of our complacency, and it says, hey, we need to reskill as a country, and we can't just rely on the skills coming to us. So I think that's a long way of saying apprenticeships will be very high on the government's agenda with any support they provide, and that could also be through construction. And that the reason that's very vital is because of our youth. And generally, they are the ones that feel or get hit the hardest with unemployment. And if that data goes up, and in some areas of Australia and in some towns of different states, unemployment for the youth is up 20-25%. When things were good for the rest of the country, let alone moving forward, because it's just so hard for them. You know, do they get more education? Do they stay longer at uni? Do they leave school earlier? If they were in the middle of an apprenticeship and they lose it
what do they do? What do their parents do? So this is going to go on for a little while. In fact, it's projected, by some experts that this could take 3 to 5 years or a decade or more to claw back to where we were, if we ever do get back there.
There's some estimates suggest that government debt could be 2 decades before the budget gets back into the balance. But there are two elements to that as well. You talk about youth unemployment, and youth is one aspect to that, which is very important because that's the future. Unemployment is the other one. Unemployment is a blight on any economy.
Yep.
It decimates an economy. It decimates productivity. It decimates capital. And it stays around for a very long time. And that's the reason why the government is prepared to put such vast sums into the likes of Jobkeeper. Yep. Because keeping jobs is everything, not just for individuals and for individual dignity, it's for the country as well. Because once you lose jobs, you lose skills. Statistics and history show that it takes many, many years to get those back. They don't just come right back. And that's where we're in probably a much better position than the US, where there's been so many job losses, and we know that so many of those will not come back for years to come.
No,
so
I was looking at a lot of data yesterday coming out of the US, David, on how many massive chains were going into administration or bankruptcy. Yeah. These are chains that have been around for so long in the US. We haven't seen a lot of that happening here yet.
No, we've been protected, and I think, again, come back to Jobkeeper, it's been a great intervention by our government. We have to see how that goes forward, but so far, it's definitely been a success because it's kind of keeping things alive, and it's keeping hope alive. But, yeah. And I think the thing is, how do we go beyond this? So obviously these measures that you started this conversation with are going more or less till September. And then it's a matter of it's a matter of how you transition. So one thing we do know from what I've said is the RBA governor is really urging the government to take a targeted approach and to continue, at least in some way, shape or form, Jobkeeper. And I think the theme will be more targeted approach and a tapering off. Scott Morrison initially started talking about a snapback, didn't he, several weeks ago. He hasn't used that term, I don't believe, for quite a while now. There won't be a snapback. There won't be anything sudden. There probably won't be a V-shaped recovery, but hopefully there will be more of indications are showing, I would say, more of a soft landing than a hard landing when it does come to September, with measures tapering off, some targeted measures. But yeah, it's got to be managed carefully, obviously.
And it needs to be. And I think that's what we're hearing the most now, is that if you are going back to work, you're supposed to be transitioning. How are you traveling there? How productive are you going to be at work? Should you stay working from home? Every single business at every single level is having to address even healthcare as part of their strategy within their own businesses, because we still don't have a cure.
Yeah,
what happens if someone gets sick when they come to work again?
Yeah, well, isn't the definition of this downturn, which is unique, isn't it all about the intertwining of health and economy? Yeah. So, dead right, any business has to be as mindful of health, the health situation of its workers as it does as the economic situation, because one drives the other.
That's right. And they will affect them both. The last thing any business needs is to be shut down and in isolation because there's been another case reported. Given that A, we don't have a cure, and B, we feel like we're going one step forward, is it then 2 steps back? But as you said, we are hopeful and optimistic.
We are, and I think part of the optimism as well, and it's just one part of that puzzle, is that the government, through, we could call it a fortuitous accounting error ultimately.
The 60 billion that was miraculously found.
Yeah, exactly right. It's not good to be to make a big mistake in maths at that level, but if you do, you want it to go in your favour, and ultimately it will go in the government's favour. And they don't really have 60 billion up their sleeve, because this is money which would need to be borrowed.
That's right.
However, they kind of have 60 billion up their sleeve, and it gives them a lot more leeway, and it gives them room for manoeuvre beyond September. So I think that's another reason why our economy can expect a soft landing, independent of all the doomsayers out there, when it does come to September.
Well, I share your thoughts on that one, David, and I'm also hopeful that we will have a better recovery than other people estimated. And I urge everybody out there, think carefully, be safe, stay safe, observe all the safe distance, social distancing, observe the hygiene, pass it on to your friends and family, take care of your kids. That's all we can do as individuals, and then we just rely on the government and other big institutions to take care of everything from their end, and that you and I can come together again and have further discussions on how great that movement's happening, and wish everybody well on our new road to recovery.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I totally agree. I will just end with this, that we had some consumer confidence figures released yesterday by ANZ. They do a weekly review of this, so this is another hotly watched figure. And that figure, that weekly consumer confidence figure, is up for 9 weeks in a row, which is a pretty big deal. The Australian dollar, as we speak, is on a sort of 10% tear, so it's actually up 10% at the moment. That's another good indicator. Australia is seen as a good option internationally for bond buying. Japan's buying a lot of Australian bonds at the moment. These are all good indicators. We just need that to continue. But I think as an economy, we are on the right track.
Thank you for your discussion this week, David, on the economy. Who else could we get but our money man of Sort My Money? For everyone out there, listeners, viewers, watchers, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and share SME TV with all your friends and family. If you have a comment, jump on right now and let us know. Tell us what you think. A big shout out to the SMEA Association of Australia for backing SME TV and podcast channel and making all of this possible. And if you have any information, financial or otherwise, you can reach out to us, news@smea.org.au. Thank you very much, David. We'll catch you again.
Sounds good. Thanks, Angela.
Bye.